Time to pull up a chair. We've got another great story for you today in the rLounge. After being iced out by her daughter-in-law, who's apparently decided that mother-in-law's generosity is somehow a bad influence, Grandma's done playing nice. Today in the rLounge, Grandma's not going down without a fight. Daughter-in-law banned me from seeing my grandkids. I cut them off financially, and she can't pay their school fees. I'm a 60-year-old grandma who's gotten into a mess with my daughter-in-law, Kathy. It's been going on for a few months now, and I feel like I'm reaching my breaking point. My son has been married to Kathy for 9 years. They have 2 boys, 7 and 5. My son had a decent job, and just before COVID, they bought a house. Who knew about the upcoming disaster? Pandemic hit, and he lost his job. Since then, he has been struggling financially for the mortgage and to make ends meet. Kathy has been a stay-at-home mom since the elder one was born. She has been intending to join back ever since the younger boy started walking. That's what she has been telling everyone. I don't know what's their exact plan. All I know is that I'd pitch in for most of their high-ticket purchases and even bail him out on the regular stuff, like their son's private school fees, house mortgage, etc. I even had to pitch in for the down payment of their house. I can go on and on. However, that's not the point here. All I want to say is, I've always done my best to support them financially. From covering school fees to family vacations, I've made sure my grandkids have every opportunity they could ever want. I have never considered this a burden. I love being able to make life a little easier for them. However, I have never used that as an opportunity to overstep my boundaries. I've stayed in my lane. Despite this, Kathy doesn't reciprocate the affection. Forget that. She doesn't appreciate it even. It feels like she's tolerated me, probably because I foot a good deal of their bills. Our relationship has never been what you'd call warm, but also not hostile. However, of late, it has gotten worse. She has started pulling back. She has been canceling family gatherings and cutting down their visits to my house. Until 2 to 3 months back, the kids would visit every month for a weekend, or at least for a day. Now it's many months since they have visited. Every time she does this, she comes up with excuses that seem increasingly flimsy. Sometimes they have school assignments to complete. Sometimes it's their swimming competition. Sometimes as lame as they're too tired for a drive. There were a few times when I asked her if I could visit them since I'd been missing the kids. She would pull absurd reasons down her sleeve. Either the house is dirty, or they got to visit her parents, or they just wanted a silent weekend. It's like every month, she's finding new ways to distance the kids from me. Initially, I thought it was maybe unintentional, just the pressures of life or her being busy. Now I'm starting to wonder if it's deliberate. I don't know how much longer I can take this. It feels like I'm being quietly pushed out of my own family. Is my concern even genuine? Wanted to have a conscious check before brooding over it. Things have changed, you know. Kids these days want more privacy, and a lot of new things have come up which wasn't there during our times. You guys think I should be worried? Edit to add more information. Gosh, I didn't expect the floods of comments and questions. Thank you. I realized the information was bits and pieces. Here's the other stuff. My husband and I started a farming business almost 2 decades back. It's not as huge as it sounds, but it's sustainable and generates a stable income. Unfortunately, I lost him 6 years ago. To get rid of my loneliness, I stepped up and took charge of it, the whole of it. My son didn't want to be a part of it. They didn't want to stay in the countryside. They have jobs in the city. Fair enough. They visit us often, and I'm happy with that. The kids love to be here in nature, and I love to put a smile on their faces. That's why I never hesitate to pitch in whenever they need me. Apart from a son, I have a daughter who is doing quite well for herself, so I don't mind spending my earnings on my son and grandsons. Coming to my son's finances. Well, he had a decent paying job pre-COVID. He bought a house and then the pandemic hit, and he lost his job. With 2 little kids, it becomes impossible to manage all the finances from the savings. So, I pitched in full-fledged during that time. Eventually, he got a job, but his commitment continued to rise as the children started preschool and school. Hence, I remained his at the moment. It sounds like you've been incredibly supportive, stepping in time and time again to help your son and his family stay afloat. You've clearly done all of this out of love, and it must hurt not to feel appreciated, especially if Kathy's behavior has shifted and she's distancing you from the kids. You're right to wonder if you're being pushed out, or if this is just her way of managing a busy family life. Maybe you could gently address the distance by having an honest conversation with your son. Update 1. It's much worse than I thought. To put it bluntly, she's banned me from seeing my grandkids, which honestly feels like a knife to the heart. The stuff that led to that was a phone call 2 days back. I got a surprising call from my eldest grandson. Though he's only 7, he sounded so mature on the phone. He told me they missed me and wanted to come over to my house. When I asked if his parents knew he was calling, He hesitated and then quickly hung up. That one call broke my heart. Clearly the boys were missing me, and I couldn't bear the thought of him feeling like he had to keep it a secret. So I decided to take matters into my own hands and send both my son and daughter-in-law a message, explaining that Ben had reached out to me. I wanted to clarify if they had a problem with him visiting, or if he was even allowed to speak with me. The message went unanswered. The very next day, I got an angry email from daughter-in-law accusing me of manipulating Ben and interfering with their parenting. She subtly called me a bad influence and said she didn't want me to spoil the kids with materialistic stuff. I was devastated. It was clear she was never going to let me have a normal relationship with my grandkids. Until this point, I had done nothing except offer help, kindness, and love. Her reaction felt wildly disproportionate and cruel. After a few sleepless nights and a lot of advice from friends, I decided to confront it. About a week later, when my son came down to collect the monthly check, I asked him if something was wrong and why his wife was avoiding me. At first, he brushed it off, saying she was just busy or under a lot of stress. He's a peacekeeper by nature and rarely stands up to her, so I wasn't entirely surprised. But I couldn't just drop it. I finally asked him outright if his wife had a problem with me, and if so, why she couldn't simply tell me. He got uncomfortable and said, "Mom, I don't think it's that big of a deal. She's just doing things her way." Then, like a ticking time bomb, the truth came out. Kathy had apparently decided, without warning or prior discussion, that I was spoiling the grandkids too much. Her claim? I was overstepping and creating problems by giving the kids too many gifts. So to fix things, she decided to reduce grandma time. I was floored. This wasn't about spoiling the kids, was it? I've never crossed boundaries. I buy them gifts for birthdays, Christmas, and the occasional treat. Nothing extreme. The gifts are mostly essential items, some books, developmental toys, or school supplies. Even if she had a problem with that, she could have told me not to give the gifts, and I would have obliged. There's no reason to have this extreme behavior. When I asked my son why she hadn't come to me about it, he looked away and mumbled that Kathy felt insecure and thought the kids liked me more than their mother. That was the real issue. She was jealous that the kids liked spending time with me. I asked him if he's okay with his children not meeting their grandma. He tried to dodge the bullet by saying that it's just temporary, and soon Kathy would loosen up. Until then, I should have patience. It made me tear up. I didn't know what else to say. So I just dropped the conversation. Then the same night, I got a call from Kathy. It was almost 10:30-11. I was asleep. I got worried about the phone call at that hour. She was screaming at the other end that I was trying to manipulate my son against her. She said, "You witched about me, and now you face the consequence. You're banned from my children's lives, forever." My ears were red hot. I was still holding the phone and didn't realize when she hung up. How could she just ban me from my grandson's life? I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. I had to take pills. The next day, my son called from work and said he was sorry for Kathy's behavior. I asked what happened that she suddenly blew up at me. He said he was talking to her about letting the children meet me as I was so upset without them. That's when she picked up on him for discussing her behind her back. She laid out straight that I was not allowed to meet her children. I was curious to know what pushed her to take this stern step. So, 3 months back, I took my grandsons to Disneyland. They've been wanting this trip for a long time. My grandsons were anyways fond of me, and after that trip, they just couldn't stop talking about it. This made Kathy insecure that her sons were slipping off her hands. How ridiculous. How can she not understand that children tend to talk relentlessly about the experiences they cherish, and Disneyland is one of them? Instead of being excited about her kids' happiness, she's jealous. How shallow of her. I was like, "What did you say to this? Are you going to do anything about it?" He replied, "What can I say? She has the last say in the matters related to the children." I was flabbergasted at this response. I mean, his wife wants to cut me off from his children's life, and he just sits there doing nothing? I hung up the call. It was just too much to process. I can't wrap my head over this silly reason. Do you guys think it's a valid reason to ban me from meeting my grandkids? It's tough to see your son caught in the middle, especially when he seems unstable, or perhaps unwilling to stand up to his wife on this. Kathy's insecurities seems to be driving her decisions, and rather than having a constructive conversation with you, she's shutting down the relationship entirely, which isn't fair to you or the kids. Update 2. This is not an advice suggestion post, just want to vent out and feel a little better. Not sure why I can't change the advice tag from here. Anyway, let me start by saying I didn't take the children without her permission, neither this time or before. I always text her or my son that I'm planning to do this for them. Only when they give me a nod do I proceed with the plan or tell the kids. If she had a problem with Disneyland, she could have stopped me, but no. She's using it as an opportunity to cut me off. The reason is she's jealous that the kids might end up loving me more than her. What a witch she is. I was angry and hurt. What could I do about it apart from sulking? Here we don't have grandparents' rights, and even if it were, I don't have the time and energy to go through it. So I let it be. I couldn't let them use me any further. So the next time my son came down to collect his monthly check, I told him point blank that I'm pulling back all the financial support, and now they're on their own. His face fell. He started to argue, saying it was unfair and that I could not cut off the support without notice. I replied, exactly. One has to be notified, right? Then how could you guys cut me off from my grandkids' life without any reason? So you get the same from me. I'm not funding a situation where I'm treated like an outsider. He threw his best bet by asking, would you give us the money if Kathy unbanned you? I was amazed at his audacity. He was talking as if I was some inanimate object with no feelings. I said, I helped you because I loved you and the boys irrespective of your wife's coldness towards me. However, after seeing the heights of her bitterness, I could only care less about you folks. So, goodbye. He said, what if Kathy apologizes and makes it right? I laughed and said, good luck. I'll be a proud mama if you really could make her do this. I knew my simp boy couldn't dare to speak up to this woman. Forget about getting her to apologize. If he had any backbone, his wife could never have banned me in the first place. Things went quiet for a while. I'll admit, part of me hoped my son would come to his senses. Instead, I heard through extended family that daughter-in-law was telling everyone I am withholding money to control the family. She made it sound like I was punishing them for not obeying me. It was upsetting to hear. I bit my tongue and decided to let it go. To have my sanity intact, I stopped indulging in any conversation related to her. I missed the boys, so I started to do some social service to keep myself busy. I realized it was better to use my money to actually help someone in need instead of blowing it on ungrateful people. I thought I was healing from the hurt until I got a frantic call from one of my closest friends a few days back. She owns a salon where Kathy often visits. Apparently this time my friend had overheard a rather telling conversation. Kathy was visiting with her friends and bragging about how she had cut out my influence from the family. She was mocking my countryside sense of fashion, calling me all sorts of names under the sun. She was glad to get rid of my obsession with my grandkids. She was boasting about teaching me a lesson for trying to overshadow her in front of the kids. She even claimed I was buying their love with gifts and money. Hearing this made my blood boil. Not only was she alienating me from the grandkids, but was making a mockery of my efforts to be there for my family. After dedicating everything to your family, this is what you get in return. Hatred and mockery. I broke down. I mean, how could I stay stronger knowing that she was openly spitting venom against me? I'm sure she would be trying her best to manipulate the kids against me, or maybe lying to them that I abandoned them or something. I want to confront my son about it, but what's the point? He has no spine to speak up. He's no kid to not understand what is going on. Still, he chose to stay quiet. Well, good for him. Update 3. As you can see, 4 months went by after I cut them off financially. Yesterday, my son finally showed up, looking worse for wear. It turns out they'd been having financial troubles without my support. Despite that, daughter-in-law was still splurging on luxury items. I'd hoped that maybe, just maybe, my son was coming to apologize, or at least offer some sort of peace offering. But no, he was there to ask for money for the grandkids' school fees. I asked him how he has been managing until now. He said he'd been swiping his credit card until now. When the situation has come to that, he doesn't have money to pay the bills. When Kathy got to know about the financial cutoff, she chuckled and asked him to get another job to compensate. My son is working 2 jobs to make ends meet while she's still planning when to go back to the workforce. Well, I don't blame her fully. He's incompetent. When I brought up his wife's demand that I stay out of their lives, he looked frustrated and exhausted and said, "Mom, you have to understand. She's just doing what she thinks is best for the kids. She thinks they're better off without all the spoiling." I couldn't hold back anymore. I told him about what I'd heard from my friend, about how his wife had been mocking me behind my back. He looked visibly uncomfortable, but he didn't defend her. I asked him, "Is this really the kind of family you want for your kids? To keep them from their grandmother while their mother tears down everyone who doesn't cater to her?" He looked down and whispered, "I don't know, Mom. I don't know what else to do." I said, "Well, to start with, call her out for her evilness. Show her the mirror. Talk to her about the reality of her financial state and the adversity of her decision. She could care less about anything, even as severe as her kids' education getting affected. All she wants is to have me out of their lives. Fine by me. I'm out. But I also take the money out of the relationship. You can't have my money when you can't stand me, right?" I refused to pay the school fees, telling him that if Kelly's pride mattered more than the kids' well-being, then he needed to figure out things for himself. He started sobbing that his son's education and their future was jeopardized in this catfight. I said, their mother should be more concerned about them. I barely would be living to see their failure successful lives, but most likely their mother would, and if she doesn't care, why would I? He tried all ways to guilt trip me, but I reminded him of his words when he said he would make Kathy apologize. He got bitter and said I was just digging into the matter to make it worse. He said he was stuck between the two most important people in his life. I clarified it wasn't a catfight. His wife was being cruel to me, and all he did was watch in silence. I told him if he had any self-respect, he should take charge of his life and not beg in front of me for money. He insisted I put my guard down for all the sake of his kids and him. I said I'm done being manipulated. So he better use his word tricks to get his wife's lazy butt to work and help him financially. He left after that, realizing I wasn't going to back down. I do feel bad and sometimes even guilty for letting those kids suffer, but I can't let their parents exploit me and walk all over me, right? Your son coming back, not to reconcile or take responsibility, but to ask for more money, underlies the entitlement that has seeped into their lives. His refusal to address his wife's behavior, even after seeing the fallout firsthand, is disappointing, but sadly not surprising. Hold your ground, OP. Update 4. 6 months after cutting financial support, my son showed up again. He told me, in a defeated tone, that they had transferred the kids to a community school. They also didn't solve their financial troubles. I just chuckled and said it would never get solved because they've been living way beyond their means all these years with the help of financial aid they've been getting from me. He came to plead with me to pay off his credit card because he has crossed all deadlines for the payment, and now the bank is chasing him. I just smiled and said, "No, I'm not bailing you out." He asked what should he do to change my mind. I reminded him, to start with, how about an apology from your dear wife, which you talked about months ago? He wanted to say more, but seeing me disinterested, he just left without any more words. I wasn't even looking at him while speaking, and he knew it was fruitless talking to me. A few days later, I received an email from daughter-in-law. This time, she was not angry, but pleading. She asked if I could help pay for the kids' extracurricular programs she couldn't afford. She even wrote, "Please don't make the kids suffer because of your issues with me." There was no apology, by the way, only the demand for money. I read and reread that line, and all I could see was her hypocrisy. She had started this by banning me, yet now that she was struggling, she suddenly wanted my help. Her reason for the ban was that she didn't want me to exploit the kids using money and accuse me of controlling them, and now she was pleading for the same money. Wow. I didn't respond. Then 2 days later, she sent a reminder email. I ghosted her. I mean, what else do you expect from me after being so cruel? I worked hard to detach myself from them, and I don't want to ruin it with these occasional show-ups. I've been working on rebuilding my life and focusing on the things I could control. I joined local groups and have started volunteering for social service. I even made a few friends who knew exactly what it was like to be ostracized by family, and that support has made all the difference. Every now and then, I get a text from my son, usually late at night, just checking in. I know he's in a tough spot, but I'm done compromising my self-respect to fund someone else's entitlement. I don't know what the future holds. Perhaps one day when the kids are older, they'll seek me out, and I'll be able to tell them the truth. Until then, I'm holding on to hope and standing my ground, reminding myself that I deserve respect too. And to anyone out there who's been pushed away by prideful or manipulative family members, stand strong, and don't let anyone make you feel lesser in the family you helped build. Your daughter-in-law's email, especially without any hint of an apology, shows exactly how entitled she still feels. She tried to shut you out, but came running back the moment things got tough, expecting you to fix it, without acknowledging the hurt she caused. Ghosting her was exactly the response she deserved. You've given so much already, both emotionally and financially, and it's clear your son needs to confront his own choices rather than lean on you as a crutch. Have you experienced something similar? Share it with us in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today in the rLounge. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time. And please put your chair back where you found it.